And you're totally okay to clap if you want to.
Blessed be your name, glad that is plentiful, with streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be love so undeniable. I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. You're a good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.
You're a good, good father.
It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.
Take my heart, lay it down at the feet of you whose crown. Take my life, let it go, lift it up to you whose throne. Sing that verse again. Take my life, lay it down at your feet of you whose crown. Take my life, letting go, lift it up to you whose throne. I worship you, Lord, only you, Lord, and I will bow down before you, only you, Lord. So take my friend, take my feet, all I have, I'm leaving here. Behold my wounds, behold my dreams, behold my delights, my everything, and I will worship you, Lord, only you, Lord, and I will bow down You're my delight, my everything. You're my hopes, you're my dreams, you're my delights, my everything. So I'll worship one more time. And I will worship you, Lord,
Only
nothing else but you.
I will bow down before you, only you, Lord.
The scripture reading today is from 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 to 11, and then 17 to 19. I'm reading from the ESV. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves through with many pangs. But as for you, O man of God, flee these things. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, gentleness. As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. This is the word of the Lord.
Alright. So, hello, my name is Matthew. I'm the pastor here at Damascus Road. And today, for those of you who didn't hear yet, we will be having our church's annual business meeting as part of our service. So you're coming up, going to get to hear kind of what happened over the last year, how we used our money and how that went. So we're talking about money. And before we get into the business meeting part of it, I wanted to give you guys the chance to hear a little bit about money from the Bible as well. The last few months we've been looking at a sort of faith-building friendship between the Apostle Paul and a man who was like his protege, Timothy. And so I thought, well, looking at money, what did Timothy learn from Paul about how a man of God should use money and approach money, and how should that work in the churches that Timothy and Paul were working with? So last week, for those of you who were here, we talked about work and about how Paul actually was a hard worker and how Timothy would have seen that. And so that obviously plays into some of what we're talking about today, because many of us, we work to get our money. There aren't too many people that just get money for doing nothing, but that can happen. But most of us do work for our money. And hopefully, as we see more about money, this won't just be a thing of like, oh yeah, we're going to have to talk about money today, but we'll also see a little more of Christ-likeness in how we want to be in our approach towards money as well. And that's our hope this year, is that you be inspired and inspirited with the Spirit of God to really treat all of these areas of your life, whether that's work, whether that's money, whether that's relationships, whether that's travel, any of those sorts of things that are part of our lives, that you'll approach that from a Jesus-centered approach. And that's why we're looking a bit at Paul and Timothy, because Paul told others, hey, follow me as I follow Christ, as I follow Jesus' approach. So Paul worked and even wrote to some of these people, hey, I worked so I could take care of my own needs, as well as I provided for some of the people that were traveling along with me. And especially in some areas where he was trying to win people over to the kingdom of God and Jesus, he made sure that he wasn't asking them for money, because he wanted to show, hey, I'm willing to work for this. And there's the inference that perhaps Paul even did some of his work to help pay for Timothy. So Paul would have seen that part. So we'll look at three different things about money. First off, part of what the whole point of money is, why do we have money? What should we do with money? How should we approach it? Well, one is money is useful to pay for your needs as well as the needs of others. And that includes when Paul writes to Timothy. If you read through some letters we have in the Bible, there's 1st and 2nd Timothy, he tells Timothy, hey, one of the people groups that needs to be taken care of are these widows. Those who have lost their husbands, and especially at that time frame, since it's very often the man's the one that's making the money, so a widow is left. If her husband didn't have a lot of money that he left to her, she didn't have as many ways to take care of herself. And so Paul is saying, hey, these women in the church who are known for their good deeds, so they're known for being good workers, but aren't known for having the type of job that makes a lot of money, you need to make sure to take care of them. Unless they have family members that can and should already be taking care of them. And so we see that picture that family is supposed to take care of one another. And yes, that can be spiritual family, but also just your physical family. I know that there are various people in here who not only are you making sure that you pay for your kids and those things, but they also send money back home to make sure that stuff is going well with their family at home, whether that's mom and dad or their brothers and sisters and all of those things. And there is biblical reason to have that. So it's not just what can I pay for myself, but it's how can I also have enough that I can give towards others. When Paul wrote the letter of 1 Corinthians, he kept really kind of pushing that he was going to be taking a special gift to Jerusalem because they were going to be facing a famine, there was a tough time, they were short on money, and he said, hey, all of you who are living in this area of like Greece and Macedonia are doing better off than what's happening in this other part of the world. And if they're your brothers and sisters in Christ, not just taking care of your physical family, but it's important to take care of your spiritual family. And in a way, since following Jesus had started in Jerusalem and gone out from there, Paul a little bit has it like, these are sort of like spiritual parents to you, like those uncles and aunties that have been in the faith before you were, and you should take care of them. And so I really encourage you to be prepared for giving this gift. And Paul talks through over and over with them and writes it in different ways like, hey, every week, set aside some money toward it. Make sure that you have your gift ready because I don't want to show up and then there's no gift that's available for me to take along to these other people. So Paul really stresses that the money that you get is not just for you to have for your own self, but it's also, hey, this is something that I want you to be able to share. And I mentioned last week in the book of Ephesians, Paul says, especially people who are known for stealing, you especially need to find work to do with your own hands so you can take care of your own needs as well as have enough to be able to give towards others. And so in various ways, with various kinds of people, Paul keeps encouraging, make sure that you have enough for your needs, but also enough for others. And it's very likely that Timothy would have been sent by Paul as a letter bearer. So they didn't have the post office back in the day. There wasn't DHL or there wasn't British Post or all these things. It was just like, okay, I write my letter, link it, put a stamp on it, and I send it. But they would often send it with a person. So it's like, hey, I want this letter to go to the friends and family that I know in Ephesus. I find someone who's already going that direction anyway. And some of that still happens today. We have that several times. Example would be when I have to send some things to a pastor that we have connection with in Nakuru, Kenya. Often, Nellie will find someone who's traveling there and have them take that with them. It's not just you put it in the post from here necessarily, but often there is, if we have to take things, you send it with a friend. And that's true in various cultures where it's like, I'm going somewhere, here, could you take this with for me? Now, Paul did the same thing with Timothy, where he said, hey, you're going to be traveling. I'm sending you to this church. Take this letter with you and read it out for them. Because often they would also sort of train the speaker, like, this is how I want you to read this. This is what I want you to say. Because it's helpful to have also the inflection, not just to read stuff. And we find that out day by day by those who have like cell phones. Have you ever got a text message and you read it and you got so angry about it, and then you talk to the person and they're like, no, you misunderstood. That was what I was going for. It's just better to just do this person to person. Have you ever had that experience? Like, oh yeah, in person is helpful. So when Paul couldn't be in person, he'd be like, okay, Timothy, this is how you say it. Maybe get a little more stern at this point. Make sure that you make this part sound really nice. And so Paul would have sent Timothy with these letters. Letters that said things like, so make sure that you take care of the widows among you, or make sure that you prepare an offering to be able to give. So Timothy would have seen that, would have known that. And I'm glad, just to say, for our church, we'll get to it in the business meeting, but I'm glad that our church has been self-supporting as a church since about year 3 of the church. The church has been around for about 9 or 10 years, and we were able to be self-supporting of the money that just comes into this church. And not just for ourselves, but we have been intentional with, we give money towards other work of God that's going on around the world. And so we're trying to live that out as well. We see this is how we're supposed to be, is we're paying for ourselves as well as able to help others. And that's what we want to keep doing as a church. A second thing about money is to beware of making it your love. It's part of why we sang that song today, I will worship you, Lord, only you. It becomes so easy to get so distracted about money issues for many people. Maybe there are some of you who are like, no, I've never worried about money in my life. Well, that's good for you. Know that most of the world, people do have those moments of like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Do I have enough for this? Oh, but what if this or that happens? But we need to make sure that we don't let that be our focus, our concern, and certainly not our love. Paul wrote to Timothy that in the last days, there were going to be bad, evil times. And here's why he said those times are going to be very difficult, for people will love only themselves and their money. I'm not saying if this counts as the last times or not, but I am saying I know a lot of people who really, they just love themselves and their money. That hasn't been new. I think over the last 2,000 years since this was written, that's happened often. And we're told to really beware of that, because people love their money. And he warns Timothy to write to the rich, to talk to the rich. He says, anyone who wants to get rich is likely to fall into trouble. People who long for it fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires. So why? Why is Paul concerned that people will get overly concerned with it? Well, there are a few quick things. One, he says, it leads to foolish and harmful desires. If you've ever heard the term idle hands are dangerous because like you have too much time on your hands to do things. Same sometimes happens with people who have just too much money, they don't know what to do with it, so they get distracted with like, ooh, well I have all this extra money, now what can I pay for? Ooh, I have this extra account on the side, I have this extra credit card that my wife doesn't know about, how can I use this money? We find all of these ways. So longing to get rich can sometimes lead towards foolish and harmful desires. It can be a root of all kinds of evil, he says. Sometimes people say like, oh, money's the root of all evil. That's not what it says. It says it is a root of all kinds of evil. There are plenty of roots towards evil. It's not always money. But a lot of the decisions people make, even a lot of the bad decisions, are made because of money. It's well, if I look at the bottom line, if I cheat on this, then I will be able to make more money, so I'll cheat. Well, the root of that kind of evil was the love of money. And that happens in various kinds of ways. He also says that people who have longed to get rich, they wander from the truth. That sometimes, and this one is actually really easy to happen in churches and has happened sometimes with really famous pastors and leaders, is they go, ooh, if I say this, people are going to like it and I can make more money. Or, ooh, if I teach it this way, then people will give more money to the church. and then that gets me a bigger salary. And there's that danger that they'll wander from the truth because they'll wander towards something that they think can make them more money. And that's unfortunate when it happens in church, but that happens in the lives of daily people as well. That's not just something that's kept to those who already have a lot of money, but people are willing to sometimes sacrifice the truth or just lose sight of the truth by going after money. But at the same time, Paul says, and it's people who've longed for money, they've pierced themselves with many sorrows because money is unreliable. Have you ever bought something that was really expensive that you really liked, and then it got lost, or it got broken, or it got stolen, and you were really sad about it, and you would have never had that sadness if you just never had it in the first place? I'm not saying that all these things that we can have are bad. I had a computer once that was stolen from my car, and I think I know who did it. But I couldn't prove it. But I didn't see the guy for a couple months until I saw him again at the Salvation Army because he'd probably run out of money and came back to the Salvation Army so that he could get his free meal again. I was like, "Ugh, Jesus loves you." I just wanted at least my photos off of there because I don't have a backup yet. But it bothered me for so long to have that, and it took so much time, and the night when I found out, I had trouble falling asleep, and I had a friend that was visiting me that week, and I was trying to still just enjoy the time with that friend, but because of this stuff, this thing that I had that was valuable to me, I was pierced with a sorrow because it was unreliable. The stuff that you can get with it and the money that you can have, it can seem like it's worth a lot now and it can drop tomorrow. My dad is a person who's done a lot with the stock market, and I remember as a kid watching that, where my dad would have a really good day or a really bad day based upon the stock market. Like, ooh, gold is up today, and he's happy. And then the next day, Dad's in a bad mood. Well, that's because oil went down because of something that happened in Russia. Anyway. Money is unreliable. Money can be a great tool, it can be helpful for so much, and it can pay for our needs and the needs of others. But if that's what you're loving, you can lose it. And it's going to be really, really sad for you if you've held on to it so tight and then it's not worth anything anymore. There's times when you had currency, and then they changed the currency, and now it's worth nothing. I don't know, some countries haven't had to go through that recently, but those who are maybe Europeans, that you have your stuff from before there was the euro, and now the Deutsche Mark is worth nothing because they have the euro, and you find it 20 years later, oh hey, I've got this worth this piece of paper. But it's a reminder that we used to have this. Money can be unreliable. And another thing that he warns about, back in 1 Timothy chapter 2, Paul warns against trying to gain attention for yourself through displays of your wealth. And he talks about that, especially with the women that were in that church at the time. It seems like they were really wealthy women. And when he's talking about don't make yourself attractive through your clothing, through all this fancy jewelry, it's not just saying don't try to look nice, but very likely what these women are doing is they're showing off their money. It's don't make yourself attractive through having the largest rock on your finger and walking around in church that all the time. You have your Bible and you're like, I love Jesus. Or, I mentioned it a few weeks ago, there's someone who on Instagram has a thing called Preachers and Sneakers. And it looked at how expensive a lot of the shoes that some of these pastors and worship leaders have. And it's that question, right? Are they, some of them are women, many of them are not women, but are they living true to this when Paul is saying, hey, don't make yourself attractive by what you have on the outside of you. Make yourself attractive by the good words, the good works, the good deeds that you do. And so if I compare last week's sermon about work and this week's about money, don't make yourself beautiful with your money, make yourself beautiful with your work. is sort of what Paul seems to get across. And maybe for some people, they walk into this church and like, oh wow, this looks fancy and expensive or something, but I think for others, you've seen fancy, expensive churches, and this is us. I'm grateful that we don't make decisions as a church to try to make ourselves look as rich as possible. Or especially to say that we have more money than we do, because we're us as a church. We run, this is not my carpet. We don't want to look like we don't want to look bad, but the point of being the family of God isn't to try to show off our wealth just the same as the point of individuals. Paul was saying is don't do this just to get people's attention. Oh, look at this big fancy thing I bought. I'm not saying you can't have a nice car, but if you're just like, let's drive up in the nice car, that way everyone looks at me. That's not living the way that Paul encouraged Timothy to live. A last consideration about money that I'd like to give is, Paul talks with Timothy a lot about considerations for the local church leaders and how they respond to money. So he uses these various terms, bishops, elders, deacons, but he says those who are leaders, they should not love money and they should not be dishonest with money. Now, we've just seen that we're not supposed to love money. So he's just saying, I want your leaders to be examples of what everyone should be like. It's not like, oh, this is just for leaders and this is not for the rest of you. No, this is for the rest. This is for everybody in the church. But you really want your leaders to be living out this example. That they're not people who are dishonest with money and they're not the people who look like they're lovers of money. Also, with local leaders, Paul takes great pains and takes extra time to show that he is being faithful with money himself. So I mentioned that there is this offering that was going to go to Jerusalem. And when Paul is writing to the churches about it, he says, okay, with that offering, I'm actually taking others with me. And as we look at the names of the people, it looks like pretty much every church he went to, they're like, hey, we want to give you a gift. He's like, great, who are you going to send with me? So that each of these places sends at least one person with, so that by the time Paul gets to Jerusalem, all of these churches feel like they're a part of it. And then when they all go back home, it's not just Paul showing up saying, yeah, I took all the money. But then Trophimus or Philetus or all these people, they can walk into the church and said, I saw the handover, yes. There was more than one person counting the money, there were several people, yes, it got there faithfully. And Paul was willing to take extra people along on the journey just to make sure that they knew he was maintaining his integrity and being faithful with what they'd given. And the last consideration about local leaders is Paul does say that elders who do their work well, especially preaching and teaching, he said they should be respected and that they should be paid. So even though Paul says, okay, I want to make sure that your leaders are not people who love money or are dishonest with money, he's not saying your leaders need to be poor. He wants everyone in the church to be taken care of, and that includes widows, and that includes leaders. And that includes everyone in between. So Paul had moments where he said, you know what, I'm not going to accept money from you because I think by taking your money that causes a bad light to be shed on the gospel. But other times Paul said it is right for leaders to receive from the work that they're doing. And he makes the example of like an ox that's plowing through the ground. He says you don't muzzle it while it's working. It should be allowed to eat while it's also doing the work. The same. If you have a pastor that's working in a church, he should be allowed to also be able to get some of the fruit from what he's doing. So there's those three considerations with local leaders. That they do what they can to maintain integrity, to show that to others, as well as just having that in their hearts themselves. And that we should try to make sure that we take care of our leaders. And I'm grateful that our church does pay me. Thank you. It's honest. And I'm glad that I can honestly say that the times where I've received raises were not because I pushed for it. When I first started being pastor of this church, I was paid 2 days a week. And then throughout time, people said, hey, Matthew, you are working more of those days. I was working full time, just being paid 2 days. And then said, okay, well, now we'll raise it, we'll say you get paid for 3.5 days, or you're getting paid for 4 days, or you're getting paid for 5 days. So like, kind of every year they'd be like, oh, another half day for you. Or they're like, oh, your pay scale, let's relook at that, and then do that. So I'm grateful that people have done that. I'm grateful that our servant leaders have done that. So thank you that I do get paid. But I'm glad that I can honestly say it wasn't because I was pushing for like, ooh, ooh, ooh. But if you give me this, then I can get a fancy car. It's been because others have said, Matthew, you really should get paid more. And my wife sometimes was unhappy, and I was like, no, it'll be okay. She's like, Matthew, it's okay for you to get paid for what you do. It's in the Bible. Yes, there are some times where people tell pastors, it's in the Bible, come on. So, your Timothy task for this week. Every week I'm trying to give something, a practical thing that you can do. And what it would be is give toward either a person that you know, or maybe that's towards an organization, to a nonprofit thing that can be towards a church. But give towards something that you know can use the financial support. Maybe that's a family member, maybe that's a friend that you know, maybe that's someone that you walk by every day, like, hey, that person looks like they're homeless, I could give something toward them. But with your money, as it's supposed to be able to take care of yourself and others, then find an other that you can give something toward this week. And I know some people are like, I don't have any money coming in this week. Okay, fine. If you get your money at the beginning of the month or whenever that is, that time where like your parents give you an allowance, whatever, you can give something. Everyone has the ability to give something small. If you remember, there was a time where Jesus is on a hillside and there's 5,000 people, and how can he feed all of them? But there's a little kid that comes up and says, hey, I got some bread, I got some fish. Kid didn't have a lot, but was willing to offer what they had. And we can do the same. So, may you have all of that in mind as you approach money. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you that you are the one who takes care of us. And I pray that we would keep our minds on that, remember that. Just like yesterday when I was getting to talk with my son, how do you get food? It's like, well, because Mama and Papa make it, and then they put it on my plate. And I pray that we would see you as our provider like that. And when people ask us, okay, how do you make your money? Or how do you get provided for it? That we remember that you're the one who's given us every good and perfect gift that we have. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So now, Blaze is going to come up. Blaze is on our servant leader team. He's been our treasurer for the last year. And so Blaze is going to walk us through some of the things as we go. This will be our business week.
Hi, good morning. I am going to present the financial result of the church. But just before doing that, I want to also thank God for the teaching that we just received, because it's good to have the principles the kingdom principles when it comes to money, to know how we are supposed to behave. For myself also, it's really encouraging. I work in a bank. I will not give the name of the bank, but just tell you that it is represented by a lion, and the color is orange, so I'll let you guess. And it is really encouraging to know, what are the principles of God. And why we do this business meeting, it is also good to see how we as God stewards, how we manage the money. It is one thing to receive money from God, but it is another thing to manage it well. So it is good to look at these results. This part is not spiritual, so there is no verse. It's only about figures, graphs, statistics, but it is encouraging to see the challenges that we have as a church and how we can move forward towards where God is leading us. All right, so you can go to the next slide. As some of you know, we have split the way we receive money in the church into 7 sources of income, just for the purpose of making it clear how we receive money in the church. So we have the Sunday offering. This is the money that you give every Sunday. We have the online offering. This is the money that you send directly to the bank account, mentioning offering or donation, or if you do not mention anything, then it comes to this category. We have the online tithing, because there are people in our church who are willing to tithe. For them it is important, and they send money directly in the church saying this is for tithe. So far, and last year we had also a food package, so people gave specifically to have the food package ministry. And then mission offering, this is the money that you give to support the different mission trips that we organize in the church. And then we also have two new sources of income. The first one is Benevolence Fund. This is the money that you give to help those who are in the church who are going through financial difficulties. So this is where the money goes. And then the last one is the card reader. This one is just for technical reasons, because we have a card reader here in the church. You can also send money through that. But because we only receive the transaction as one transaction, so it is not possible to see who sent the money for what purpose. So we decided to put this category apart. Yes, you can go to the next one. So let's start with the Sunday offering. What we do is just we do a comparison between 2017 and 2018 to give you kind of evolution of things. And what you see is that the Sunday offering has been, let's say, decreasing a little bit for various reasons. So this is just to show you the results. Okay. Yeah, you can go to the next one. The online offering, if you compare also with 2017, you see that in 2017 we had quite huge amounts of online offering, which has been decreasing a little bit last year. Next one. But on the opposite, the online tithing, for any reasons, we have people who have been tithing a lot last year compared to 2017, especially in March. And this is also one of the testimonies of our church, that we have people who, for a month, who just give generously as God is leading them to give. So that's why you see the tithing has been slightly increasing compared to 2017. Yeah, you can go to the next one. Food package offering. This is also another testimony that you have been giving towards food package ministries compared to 2017. And also with all the fundraising that happened last year and all the big sales, especially for food package, through that you have been able to provide more and more money, and that's why it's been increasing compared to 2017. Yeah, and then mission offerings. Yeah, it's just a small increase compared to 2017, but still. Especially in August, we had people who gave to help to support some missions that happened in 2018. So that's why you see the increase. And Benevolence Fund, this we only started last year. That's why in 2017 there was nothing. So the money that you give, it was not a big amount of money. Only in November. Someone gave a big amount to support people in our church who are going through financial hardship. That's why you see this big amount on the screen. Yes, you can go to the next one. And the card reader, as I said, is just the amount that we receive. We did not use it, I would say, a lot every month, but as you can see, we still were able to, to get some money through this card reader. Okay. And then we have other sources of income which are not usual. It happens only once or maybe twice a year. The first one is the Bible study books. So every year we study the Bible using Bible study books. This year I think it's the book of Acts. So and also through that we receive money from you when you buy your Bible study books. You can stay to the. Can you come back? Yes. The old church retreat deposits, the money that you give to the church so that we can organize the retreat, and then the mission trip payments when people send the money in the church account so that we can, book the mission trips and so on. All right, so let's see the results. Can you go to the next one? So we look at the total net income and we compare 2016, 17, and 18. What you see is that our net income just decreased a little bit. I think it's a little bit more than 11,000 euros compared to 2018. Yes, but if you go to the next one, we try to see what can be the explanations. We do not have all the answers, of course, but one of them could be the attendance number. The number of people that attend our church compared to 2017 has decreased a little bit. The average number of people who attend church in 2017 was 102, and in 2018 it was around 89, or let's say 90 people. So that could be one explanation, but we're not sure. Right. Then the expenses. So the question is, what do we do with the money that you give to us? As Pastor Matt says, we do not use this money to buy, fancy cars and so on. We split our expenses in different categories as well to show you where the money goes. And we have 10 sources of expenses. The categories, and the big. Let's say the three big sources of expenses that consume the most part of our income. The first one is the payroll and salary. So we pay the leaders, Pastor Matt, and also all the people who have been last year who came here to help on a voluntary basis. So that's why you see that 38% of our income is used by the salary. And then, of course, the rent, the place that we rent here, also consume quite part of our income, 36%. And then mission projects, as Pastor Matt says, they are projects that we support, and also schools, whether it's in Kenya, India. I think it's only Kenya, India, so it's not yet. So, these three categories are the big ones that really consume a bigger part of our incomes. But also there are other expenses, mission trips, the money that you send, especially to pay for your mission trip. That's what we also use to buy flight tickets and accommodation and so on. Benevolence, when we receive a request in the church, then we also use that money. Church retreat, outside organizations. For example, we pay an organization called CCLI for I think it's for the copyright of our songs. And also other organizations, food package, and the church ministries. We also support ministries of our church, worship team, kids ministries, drum, whatever ministries, so we provide for them. And also, of course, the bank services, because we have bank accounts and so on. But the good news for last year is that although we had expenses and we use our income to pay these expenses, but we still have 9% of our income that was like surplus, so which was not used. And if you go to the next one, here you see the total net expenses. So we compare also the expenses from 2016, 17, and 18. And what you see, and for me at least, the good news is that we have been able to decrease our expenses compared to 2018 of more than 25,000 euros. So, for me, it is encouraging. This can be explained by the fact that, okay, compared to 2017, we had less mission trips, for example, but also for the project that we support, the money that we send, we have decreased that amount of money. We still support the project that we sent half of the money, I think, to them, and other expenses as well that we have been able to remove from 2017. So our result for this year, if you you take the total income and you remove the total expenses, is that we have a positive result of more than 11,000 euros. And what we did also is that we put the comparison between 2016-17, and you see that we have had two shortfalls, 16 and 17. And so it is encouraging to see that as a church, together, we have been able to manage our money, I would say, well, and to also come up with a positive result. It means that we are in all this together. Yes, you can go to my last slide. Okay. There are three things I want to say. The first one is that we want to thank you for your generosity, because we do not make this without you. As Pastor Matt says, is that we are able to support ourselves without asking money outside, if I can say, because also you provide. It's not only the leaders. Of course, I want to thank the leaders also, because they gave us the the direction in which we have to go. But also thank you for your generosity, because you give generously every year. And the second thing is that we want to continue to apply God's wisdom and to know where we have to support and what we have to do with the money that we have. If we have to find another building or not, if we have to stay in this part of the city or not. We want to know what God wants us to do. So we continue to apply wisdom. And the last thing I want to say is that we keep on trusting God. We keep on trusting Him, that He is the one who provides for us. Sometimes we don't know what will happen, because people who have been in our church who are generous giver, they leave the church, and then you wonder, how are we going to do? But God is always providing for us. So we keep on trusting Him year after year, that together we will be able to be blessed, to bless one another, but also to bless people outside of our church. So thank you so much for your support. God bless you.
Another part has to do with our leadership. So the church leadership, kind of the top levels, so we have our church pastoral staff, which is myself, and then we also have Becky Miller, who is our discipleship director. And we have what we call our council of servant leaders, and that's 4 people from the church who make up sort of that church board. And they serve on 2-year terms at a time, but then can be extended for more, etc. But this year, we have one of our servant leaders who is going to be stepping off, and we have a new one coming in. So we also want you guys to get to see that, who are some of the leaders that we have. So first, with the sort of goodbye, Nicolette, if you would come forward. Nicolette Smink has been serving for, is it 3 or 4 years now? As one of our servant leaders.
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5 years, because you sort of came in partway through when one of the other ones had moved away. So Nicolette has served faithfully in so many different ways in the church, not just as a servant leader, and that's part of why I've really appreciated you as a servant leader, is that you're involved with people's lives. You're so helpful with the care team, as well as doing stuff with food package, as well as just greeting people and being a small group leader for so many years, and spending a lot of time with people. And that's something you've truly shown, being a servant and leading through that by setting an example, even if you're not the person who likes to be up in front, rah, 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 but you lead by example quite well. And so thank you for your service with that. Nicolette and Daniel are going to be moving away in not too long from now, 2 months-ish or so, sometime over the summer. So we're going to be sad to have to say goodbye to the 2 of you, but be grateful to have you. So, is there anything that you wanted to get to say? And you'll get to do a more official goodbye later, but is there anything in your role as servant leader that you want to share?
Well, I just want to say that I'm also very thankful. Maybe it's a very good conclusion. That I'm thankful that I was able to serve. Yeah, I'm very thankful to serve in freedom, to be loved by you as brothers and sisters. Yeah, it was very encouraging. Thank you.
our servant leader that will be coming on, the servant leader that's coming in is going to be Judith Dick. So Judith, if you would come forward. She is coming in taking the role of the secretary as well. So she's been taking our minutes and working with that. Judith is also a couple of our missions teams directors, as well as has done Bible study groups and makes incredible food as well, and does other ways of serving people. They're very hospitable, and that's something that we see mentioned in the New Testament often, like, oh, people who are hospitable, respect them and give them honor, and often leaders were people who are hospitable, and that's something that Will and Judith do quite well, and some of the reasons why I was excited to have you come on as one of our servant leaders. So we wanted to get the chance to pray with you as the servant leaders as well as the whole church, because, you know, we want to bless you and believe that God's going to give you His Holy Spirit and everything that you need for the work that you're going to be doing. Is there anything that you want to say before we do that? Okay. Then our other current servant leaders are Blaise Bijou, if you come forward, and Praveen Koshi Sam, and Nicola, if you come for the moment. Unfortunately, we are short one of our servant leaders because Jessica Marking had to be traveling over this month. We had initially planned this when she was going to be here, and then some things changed. So Jessica is not here, but Jessica Marking is also one of those four that have been our servant leader team. So at the moment, just Nicolette standing in for Jessica. Those are the servant leaders. So anytime we're like, hey, servant leaders, you can go talk to them. These are those ones that you can talk to. Blaise is going to be transferring the treasurer role to Praveen. So Praveen is the treasurer. If you want to talk money stuff about the coming years, go talk to him about it. And yeah, if those who have been previous servant leaders, will you guys also come forward as we lay hands on Judith to pray for her? So Basil, Nellie, Patrick, if the three of you would also come up. These have been servant leaders in the past that have served well, and I know what it's like to stand up here to say, hi, we're just going to be new, and also know what it's like to say, hey, God's calling us to other things in the church. So Judith, if you would kind of stand, I don't know, front, middle-ish, and then we'll get around them. And then Nicolette, since you're the one who's going, would you be the one to pray a blessing over her as we all pray for you?
Heavenly Father, we want to come before your throne to bless Judith, to ask your blessing over her life, to ask your blessing over, the call she's now following and serving the church as a servant leader. Thank you, Lord, that she's willing to be a servant leader and willing to listen to your voice and to receive your wisdom in helping out, Father, in this church. Thank you, Lord, that you're going to use her. Will you bless her with your wisdom? Will you fill her with your Holy Spirit? Will you anoint her with your wisdom, that she may receive from you your wisdom by the word, by visions, by being close to you, by living in your presence. Father, will you be with her or surround her? Will you bless her? Will you bless her husband? Will you bless them together, Father, to serve in this church and be that she will enrich the church, Father, by willing to serve you, Father, to surrender to you. Father, we pray a blessing over her in Jesus' name.